Welcome back to the channel today, guys, and we had a different episode of Call of the Night today, actually. One that really makes us think, like, how does a character like Seri, who's been a vampire for a while, how does she really feel about that? And we really dive into her character a lot in this episode and really kind of figure out what makes her tick. And it was a pretty good episode today, honestly. I didn't think we would get this particular scene actually already, but I'm kind of glad we did because it really flushes out her character a lot. So without further ado, let's sit and let's talk about Call of the Night episode 9 today. Now our episode begins with us diving a bit into how Seri spends her nights and how she constantly gets bombarded by all these guys in her phone, which I can imagine as a woman would definitely be frustrating. And it's a nice change of pace because if you really think about it, throughout the course of our whole show, we've only gotten the perspective of being a vampire from Nazna. We've only gotten her perspective on it. And I'll tell you guys now, throughout the rest of our show, we're going to see lots of different viewpoints about exactly what it's like to be a vampire, what it's like for certain people, because it's going to be different for everyone. It's going to be great for some people, and for some people, it's going to be really bad. So expect us to see lots of varying viewpoints on the topic. And this week, we focus on Seri. And she's kind of exasperated by the whole thing. That she's constantly getting bombarded by these guys night after night after night. But she does it to herself. And she's feeling a little bit put off by it. And it's here that she runs into Ko. And she's instantly perked up by this and immediately goes after him to talk to him. But Nazna ain't putting up with that shit. That ain't happening. And she immediately drop kicks her and sends her flying. Which obviously Seri does not like. And Ko asks Nazna, like, why'd you do that? Why? She didn't even do anything yet. She's like, I was protecting you. And then she says, well, actually, her face just annoys me so much, my leg just acted up on its own. And Ko's like, oh, what happened to protecting me? And her and Seri start getting into a fight right then and there. But after that, Nazna asks her, like, so what do you even want with Ko? I thought you said interacting with a human when you didn't have the intention of turning them was a drag, and you didn't like doing that. And Seri says, you're right. I was just trying to mess with Ko. It's no big deal. I didn't mean anything about it. And she goes on her way. But Ko, see, this is why I like Ko as a main character. Ko doesn't understand his own emotions, but he really understands other people's. He's very perceptive when it comes to other people's emotions, because he actually chases her down and says, is that really why you came up to me right now? It seemed like you wanted to talk. And he recalls what she said before about how everything's been kind of a drag lately, how everything's been the same, boring, mundane. And she's like, no, I was just messing with you. But Ko doesn't believe that. He says, really? Were you really? And in this moment, she's like, let's go somewhere, Ko. Let's go sing karaoke or whatever. So they go and do that. And as they get there, Seri asks him, like, yo, where's Nazna? Is she okay with this? Us hanging out? Ko's like, yeah, she was exasperated by the aspect, but she said, go do whatever you want. So it's just the two of them there. And she starts talking a bit, saying how, it's really been a hassle recently with all these guys that constantly pester me. But then she says to Ko that, you wouldn't get it. Why am I talking about this? You wouldn't understand. Ko does kind of get it, though. And he says that, I do get it a bit. I get annoyed at people who think romance is the essence of life. Basically, people that think that romance is all there is to life, that's all they focus on, and they don't actually enjoy life. And Seri is a very important thing. Seri understands this emotion very well. We'll touch more about that later, but she agrees with Ko in this instance. And it's through this little interaction between them that she's starting to understand why Nazna kind of likes Ko so much. Why she's so protective of him. And they actually start singing some songs. And this is another reason I like Ko. Ko is kind of like a vibe in and of himself, you know? She is the type of girl that wants to, be up to the trends, that wants to be hip, that constantly wants to keep things moving, keep things lively. But Ko's his own guy. He's like, why? He even says a line in this episode saying how, why should I have to pick a song or something that would liven things up? Why can't I pick a song I like? And something like that. Ko is a vibe in and of himself. He doesn't put on a front around people. He just acts like himself. And I think this is why Seri is taking such a liking to him, by the way. Just because he doesn't try to do any of these things. He just acts like himself. And that's a good thing. He even picks a really old song that at first she's like, yo, that kind of sucks. But then as she's sitting there listening to it, she's like, I kind of like that. It's different. I never actually listened to the whole thing. Tell me some other songs about that. And they start getting a bit more into it. And this is where the real crux of our episode happens, when a guy comes up to the door, actually, and starts banging on it. And it's honestly really creepy. I'll keep it a buck. It's really creepy, actually, to see some stuff like this. And Ko's kind of freaked out, like, yo, what's going on here? And Seri's like, yeah, this kind of stuff always happens. This is what I was talking about, And Ko's like, so this is what you meant by things being a drag, huh? Constantly have guys do stuff like this, which I could imagine for a girl is extremely uncomfortable. Something like this. Honestly, kind of disturbing too, in a way. And she tells Ko that, guys like this, they only really want attention. And she shows this by waving at him, and he backs off a bit and says, yeah, this is what I'm talking about by stuff being a drag. And Ko asked her in this situation, like, all right, well, what do you want to do about this situation? What do you think would make this situation better? And Seri actually gets mad at this, telling Ko that don't try to give me advice or anything like that, Ko. She's like, do you normally say this with Nazina? Like, you enjoy hanging out with her, but not with me? I want you to just ignore stuff like this. And this is where the vibe of our episode dramatically changes. I actually love the way they did the lighting in this scene and the colors, because it really shows like the tone change that we have. She says, how am I going to solve this situation? Like I said, I can just kill them if things get too out of hand. And Ko does not like this idea whatsoever. Ko hates this. He says, like, that's wrong. And she's like, why? It's only natural for humans to get killed by vampires. And Ko says, vampires are arrogant to think that. And Seri gets pissed. Like, we're arrogant? You got a lot of nerve saying that. You guys don't bat an eye when someone dies. But denounce people and denounce killing without even thinking? Who's the real arrogant person here? Which, to be fair, is a fair point. And she tells Ko, like, can you really tell me it's wrong? Like, can you really tell me that? And Ko's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. If you just talk to this guy, you could probably figure it. And then as he's saying that, the guy actually comes into the room. And it's a really weird situation. It's very strange. Because he comes in saying, you guys are fighting, right? You're not arguing about me, are you? And even Ko mentions that this guy's got a crazy look in his eyes right now. Like, I don't think there's reasoning with him. And it's at this point that Seri just decides, you know what? I'm just going to kill this guy. And tries to attack him. But Ko actually tackles him out the door and saves his life. And Seri's not happy about that. Like, Ko, what are you doing? Get out the way. If you don't, you're going to end up dying too. So Ko and this guy actually run out of there and escape and head to a back alley, and they start talking with each other. So as they're out there catching their breath, this guy actually asks Ko, like, what are you to Seri? And Ko just flat out tells him, I'm nothing. I'm nothing to her. I'm barely an acquaintance. And he says, I don't believe that at all, with the situation that was going on in there. And Ko's like, all right, well, what are you to her? And this guy clams up all of a sudden. He really starts thinking to himself, like, what am I to her, actually? And Ko's like, wow, this is not what I was expecting to happen. Now he's just plain insecure. And the guy, he can't really put into words what he's thinking. So Ko tells him, just tell me how you feel right now. Tell me exactly how you're feeling right now. I will listen. And this guy starts explaining his situation with Seri. And their meeting with each other is not anything spectacular. It's a very run-of-the-mill meeting with each other. He got dumped by his girlfriend, basically, and he got drunk one night, and he was walking, and he trips, and she just happens to run into him and talks to him, because he did just fall on his face right in front of her, so of course she's going to say something. And, she's like, nah, it seems like you had a pretty tough time, guy. You want me to go get you a water or something? So they actually go to a cafe and sit down and talk with each other. And they actually start discussing love. And he explains, how they say love is blind? And he starts explaining that, when you're in love with someone, your brain releases a bunch of dopamine, which has the effect as if you were on drugs. So essentially, when you're around someone that you love, you have a heightened sense of emotions that you can't really put into words, like you're high, basically, around them. Because your body is giving all these alerts and signals, releasing all this dopamine to your brain. And he says that it's really crazy. And he starts explaining his situation. And he starts explaining to her that that's how I kind of felt around my now ex-girlfriend. That I would get paranoid for no reason. I would get jealous. I'd get worried. And how at one point we just couldn't have normal conversations anymore. And it just kind of became weird and felt strange, creepy in a way. And how things just dramatically changed in that situation. But Seri doesn't brush him off. She's actually listening pretty intently to what he's saying. And she says, is it weird? Is that weird to really feel that way about someone? And it's here that we transition back to Ko, and Akiyama is his name, actually. We transition back to their conversation. And he starts saying that, she probably just did that on a whim. Reached out to me that day. Just because she was bored or took pity on me. But just being able to be around her made me happy. I was content. It didn't matter to me how important I really was to her in that situation. Just as long as I could be with her, it made me happy. When she would pretend to flirt with me and all that, it would make me feel better. And Ko's like, but you don't feel that way anymore, huh? You care now where you rank, right? And he starts explaining that was how it was. But then the time I didn't spend with her seemed to get longer and longer. And I would think to myself, like, what is she doing now? Like, who is she with right now? Is she talking bad about me behind my back? Just showing how insecure this can really make someone. Just showing the real green-eyed monster that is jealousy at its finest in this scene right here. And he says, once I started to think that way, I couldn't stop. I kept constantly messaging her all the time, trying to get in touch with her. Thinking about it calmly, it's just a spiral of perpetual pessimism and constant negativity. And he says, I'm sure she was complaining about me all the time. And Ko says, yeah, she was. But it wasn't about you in particular. She would just complain about the situation that she was in all the time, about how it made her feel. Trying to show this guy... Because this guy, in his mindset right now, he's thinking of himself. He's not thinking about how she's feeling. So Ko is trying to factor that into how he's feeling. Like, you got to think about her feelings right now. And it's here that they actually get interrupted by Seri herself. And it's here that she starts telling Akiyama that, I'm a vampire. What I do is I try to make people fall for me so I can turn them into one of us. But, I think I'm just going to end up killing you right now. And Ko flat out tells her, I'm not going to let you kill this guy. She's like, all right, Ko, I guess you got to die first. And she charges at Ko. But if you've been paying attention in this scene, you've noticed that Ko's been messing with his watch the whole time. Which, if you remember, is a transceiver. It's basically a cell phone on his wrist. On his wrist, I should say. So, if you pay attention, you start realizing that Ko's waiting for someone. And as Seri is charging at him, literally about to kill him, who should come drop in but Nazna? And I gotta say, guys, this is a clear case of, the animators got paid today. Because this scene looks good. They did a great job animating this scene. And Nazuna just tells her after stopping her, like, you really think I'd leave you alone with Ko? Like, are you serious? Are you that naive and dumb? You really think I would do that? Come on. And Nazuna asks her when she's pinning her down, like, this is just me being curious, but why did you decide to kill for once, Seri? And everyone's kind of taken aback by that, like, wait, what? And Nazuna says, like, you don't normally do something like this. What's up with this guy, huh? Why do you want to kill him all of a sudden now, huh? What's really going on here? And it's here that Akiyama actually stops, or tries to stop the situation, saying it's not her fault, it's because we're friends. And he reveals that after that interaction they had with each other, that they'd actually hang out with each other. They'd spend time together. And reluctantly, Seri says that, he was just someone I hung out with, and I never had the intention of turning into one of our offspring. Which is pretty hypocritical if you really think about it, from how she chastised Nazuna previously, but we won't get into that. But then Ko asks her, don't vampires only really approach humans to turn them into offspring? Why are you doing that? And it's here that we get into the crux of our situation, where Seri says, I'm really tired of doing that. She says, I'm tired of every interaction I have with people having to be about love. Of having to make people fall for me every single time I have a conversation with them. And just imagine that. Just imagine that with every conversation you had with someone, man, woman, it doesn't matter, that you had to constantly try to make them fall for you. You couldn't just talk with someone. You couldn't have a normal conversation. You couldn't have a friend. Every conversation you had with someone had to be about that, no matter what. Just imagine how exhausting that would be. How much you would hate interacting with people at that point. And Seri keeps going on and says, I don't know how to interact with people normally, because all my interactions with them are always about love. Like, in this instance, if I do something right here, they'll fall for me for sure. And just how exhausting that really feels. And Seri says that she's just completely fed up with it. And I don't blame her. So Nazuna actually gets off of her, and she tells Akiyama that, let's go our separate ways now. Let's just forget this ever happened. And Ko, in this situation, realizing that everything is not kosher, says, what do you want to do, Seri? What do you want to do in this situation? And she says, what do you mean? I just told you what I want to do. And Ko says, no. What do you really want to do? You guys need to talk about this together and figure that out. And he pushes them together so they can have an actual heart-to-heart conversation with themselves. And he says, so you wanted to kill this guy. You enjoy having a friend and you didn't want to ruin your friendship by anything else happening, so you were just going to kill him? You're hard to deal with. You're the one that is a pain in the neck to deal with. You two need to talk and figure this out. So they do start talking with each other. And she starts explaining about vampires to him, like, I'm a vampire. You see those two over there, Ko and Nazuna? They're trying the whole vampire friend thing, but they're an exception. Normally, this is not allowed. This cannot happen. Humans and vampires cannot interact with each other. So from this point forward, it has to be goodbye. But in this instance, she starts crying to herself because she doesn't want that. She actually does not want this to be goodbye. She wants to be friends with him, but because of the situation that vampires are in, it's next to impossible. They just can't do it. Seri starts saying that, it was fun to have a friend where I didn't have to have romance involved, where I could actually just talk to someone. It was fun. I really enjoyed that. I don't want that to end. And Akiyama tells her that I had fun too, but I ended up falling in love. And I can't help that I did. I can't help that I fell in love. He says, I was prepared to get rejected. I didn't want this to happen, but I want to be with you at the same time. And he asks her in this situation, will you turn me into a vampire? And she looks at him like, are you sure about that? Your life to this point will become radically different. The life you built up now could dramatically change. And he says, I don't care. So she does turn him into one. And we get a little scene with Ko here, actually, watching this whole scene. And he starts thinking to himself, like, I kind of wish I had a relationship like they have. I'm a little bit jealous. It's kind of not fair, in a way. In retrospect, this was a really simple matter, which it was. Just about a human and a vampire. And Ko is jealous about this. He's like, I wish me and Nazuna's relationship was like that. And she notices that and starts teasing him like, you were thinking that's not fair, huh? You were a little jealous. Ko's like, no, that's not it at all. And Nazuna's like, don't worry about that. We'll take our time slowly. And right now, I just want to suck your blood. Really showing that they really do have a unique relationship, him and Nazuna. It's going to dramatically change the course of our series. And it's after this that Seri turns Akiyama and says, what are you guys doing over there? Let's go celebrate. Let's go have a good time with each other. And they all do. 3 vampires now and a human hanging out with each other and having a good time. Really showcasing that it might not be impossible after all. And that's how our episode ends, with Ko thinking, this is pretty fun. And I really like this episode today, guys. Like I said, from this point on in our series, we're going to see radically different opinions about vampires. This episode really showcased that being a vampire has a lot of benefits, but it has a lot of drawbacks too. It does. Seri's situation really emphasizes that it can be exhausting to have to be a certain way with people all the time, just because you're a vampire. And we're going to see a really good representation of this soon, that I cannot wait for that episode. It's going to happen soon. It might be next week, actually. And I'm very, very excited for that episode. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. What did you think about Seri? Was she a character that you thought would be this way? Did you think that this is how she would end up being when she was introduced? Let me know in the comments. I'm pretty curious. But yeah, guys, this series is just great. I love how they tackle concept like this, and I think they do it very well. But again, let me know what you guys think. And until next time, guys, I hope you have a great day, week, month, and year. And until then, deuces, have a blessed day. And don't be like Akiyama. Don't do that stalker shit, guys. Don't do it. I'm telling you now, don't do it. It will never be worth it. You'll look dumb, creepy, ridiculous. Don't do it. I'll see you guys next time.